gozaimasu, mina-san. This is Regina, Japanese instructor at the Language Learning Center, and welcome to the Language Tidbits. So for today's lesson, mina-san, we are going to learn how to use the particle wo in the sentence. Second is how to extend an invitation, and the third one is how to respond to these invitations. Ja, mina-san, hajimemashou. So to start off, let's learn how to use the particle wo. So the particle wo marks the direct object in the sentence. So the direct object is the noun that receives the action of the verb. So the particle wo comes right after the direct object and followed by the verb at the end. So let's take some examples using the particle wo. I eat breakfast. So you have there your direct object, which is breakfast. Breakfast in Japanese language is asagohan. Asagohan. And then you have there your verb, which is to eat. To eat in Japanese language is tabemasu. Tabemasu. Don't forget, in Japanese language, we follow the subject, object, verb pattern. So, direct object first, which is breakfast. Breakfast again is asagohan. Second is your particle wo. And last is your verb, to eat. To eat again in Japanese is tabemasu. So, asagohan wo tabemasu. So, let's have another example. I read books. So again, you have there your direct object, which is books. Books in Japanese is hon. Hon. To read in Japanese language is yomimasu. Yomimasu. So let's formulate the sentence again. So, direct object should come first. Hon, followed by the particle wo, and followed by the verb, which is to read. To read again is yomimasu. So, hon wo yomimasu. Easy, right? So now let's learn how to extend an invitation using the Japanese language. So to form an invitational phrase using Japanese, we have to conjugate first the verb to its non-past negative form. So the non-past negative form of the verb is masen, followed by the question particle ka at the end. So, masen ka. So let's take the verb to eat in Japanese. You want to ask a basic question, do you eat? So, the verb to eat is tabemasu. So, tabemasu ka? Tabemasu ka? But when you make a question using the invitational phrase, conjugate the tabemasu to its non-past negative form. Tabemasen plus the particle ka. Tabemasen ka? Tabemasen ka? In English, why don't we eat? Tabemasen ka? Let's have another verb. Let's take the verb to drink. To drink in Japanese language is nomimasu. Nomimasu. Basic question is, do you drink? Do you drink? In Japanese, nomimasu ka? Nomimasu ka? Do you drink? Nomimasu ka? But when you make the question to its invitational phrase, first off is you have to conjugate the verb to its non-past negative form. So, nomimasu will become nomimasen plus the question particle ka at the end. So, nomimasen ka? Nomimasen ka? In English, why don't we drink? Easy, right? Easy how to conjugate the verbs. And now let's try to respond some invitations. If you would like to accept the invitation, you would say, "いいですね." "いいですね." It means, that sounds great or that sounds nice. But if you would like to decline the invitation, you would say, "sumimasen ga, chotto." "Sumimasen ga, chotto." In English, excuse me, but it's a little bit inconvenient for me. So please take note, in Japanese language, we cannot use the iye or no when we are declining an invitation because this may sound rude. Okay? So now let's try to invite someone and let's try to respond to these invitations. Okay? So first activity is to eat lunch. So again, you have there your direct object, which is lunch. Lunch in Japanese language is hiru gohan. Hiru gohan. And then you have there your verb, which is to eat. To eat in Japanese is tabemasu. Tabemasu. So let's try to make an invitational phrase using masen ka. So first, let's try to conjugate the verb tabemasu to its non-past negative form. So, tabemasu will become, okay, tabemasen, and then plus the question particle ka. Tabemasen ka. So, let's formulate the sentence, why don't we eat lunch? So, what is lunch again? Hiru gohan wo tabemasen ka? Hiru gohan mo tabemasen ka? Let's try to respond to this invitation. If you would like to accept the invitation, what would you say? いいですね. いいですね. That sounds great or that sounds nice. But what would you say if you would like to decline the invitation? すみませんが、ちょっと。すみませんが、ちょっと。Excuse me, but it's a little bit inconvenient for me at this moment. Okay? So now let's take another example. To watch a movie. So let's try to invite someone to watch a movie and let's try to respond to this invitation. So again, you have there your direct object, which is movie. Movie in Japanese language is eiga. Eiga. To watch in Japanese language is mimasu. 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 So again, let's try to form the invitational phrase using masen ka. So let's try to conjugate the verb mimasu to its non-past negative form. Mimasu would become hi. Mimasen. Plus, add the particle ka at the end. So, mimasen ka. Now, let's try to complete the sentence. Eiga wo mimasen ka? Eiga wo mimasen ka? Why don't we watch a movie? Let's try to respond to this invitation. So, if you would like to accept the invitation, what would you say? いいですね. いいですね. That sounds nice or that sounds great. But what would you say if you would like to decline the invitation? すみませんが、ちょっと。すみませんが、ちょっと。Excuse me, but it's a little bit inconvenient for me at this moment. Okay? And last example is, let's try to invite someone to learn Japanese language. So again, you have there your direct object, which is Japanese language. Japanese language is Nihongo. Nihongo. To study is 勉強します. Benkyou shimasu. So now let's try to make the invitational phrase using masen ka. So first off is we have to conjugate the verb benkyou shimasu to its non-past negative form. So benkyou shimasu would become benkyou shimasen plus the particle ka at the end. So benkyou shimasen ka. And now let's try to complete the sentence. Nihongo wo benkyou shimasen ka? Nihongo wo benkyou shimasen ka? Why don't we study Japanese language? And now, let's try to respond to this invitation. If you would like to accept the invitation, what would you say? Ii desu ne. Ii desu ne. That sounds nice or that sounds great. But if you would like to decline the invitation, what would you say? Sumimasen ga, chotto. Sumimasen ga, chotto. Excuse me, but it's a little bit inconvenient for me at this moment. Easy, right? So there you have it, mina-san. How to use the particle wo in the sentence. How to extend an invitation using the pattern masen ka, and how to respond to this invitation. Yoku dekimashita, mina-san. I hope you learned something today. So if you would like to learn more about the Japanese language, the grammar, and its culture, kindly follow our Facebook page. Yeah. Ja, mina-san, arigatou gozaimasu. Ja ne!